Welcome to the Marriage, Motherhood, Ministry and Me's first podcast. I thought it'd be a really nice idea to have a mother's meeting with my mother about those four elements, basically, for International Women's Month, which is this March. So actually, let me get my words straight first. Mum, if you can tell us, I suppose, how many years you've been married, how old you were when you got married, and I guess what your expectations were getting into it, and the reality of marriage once you actually started on that journey.
Okay, Dee Dee. Okay. For me, I've been married. Oh gosh, I've forgotten now. Since I was 21, and I'm now 50 plus. I got engaged at the age of 21 on my 21st birthday. I think I've been part of my church since I was 11. And back in my day, it was like, okay, you get educated, you get a job, you get married, you have children, you do your ministry in your church. And that was it really, because we didn't really look at careers or personal development, that sort of thing. It was like just the usual cycle. But as it says, I got married at 21. Mm-hmm. Yes, I got engaged at 21. I think within 6 months we got married. And for me, it was really hard because it was like I didn't really necessarily have a long courtship or relationship with my husband prior to getting married. And then as well, you had children a year later, and then another one after that, and another one after
You worked fast. It's
very definitely so. But that was it back in those days anyway. And also your husband being in ministry, and there was a lot of expectations as a wife. You had your wifely duties, looking after the children, but as I say, having one after the other, having 3 under the age of 5. It was hard. And there were elements, had to work part-time. But back then it was hard. It was hard because it was like, because realistically there was no guidance back then. There was no like counseling sessions. It was like, if you were feeling overwhelmed by a certain situation or whatever else, you might say, okay, let me speak to someone in the church, to get some advice. But all you had was go pray. It was go and pray. So, but really, realistically, there was no practical support. So, I think for me, I've learned a lot through what I went through. I wouldn't say I have any regrets, because realistically, sometimes God has to take you through a situation to shape you and even prepare you to minister to other people. And if you don't go through those experiences, you can't share anything, can you really? So for me, it was although it was hard back then, tears, whatever else. I have no regrets. I have no regrets in regards to my children, what I went through, because I say it was a learning thing, and I love all my kids, and it wasn't easy.
See, because like what you're describing about the kind of tick box journey of life. You go to school, you get education, you get married, you have kids. And like I remember saying or having this unrealistic expectation in my head that by 21 I'll be married and this is this, and you have like this romanticized view of what marriage is going to be like. For me, I've only been married 6 years in October, and I remember the first year being extremely difficult because like I said, I had this idea of this person that I was going to now become because I'm in a marriage. And when all these different walls and obstacles and challenges came up, it kind of blindsided me quite a lot, I have to say. because there's, like you said, there's this okay, so one of my expectations was that going into marriage, that all of the what I would call traumas that I went through in my youth, my marriage then would then vindicate me of all of that stuff, if that makes sense, and fix everything. So I was quite an insecure person and didn't really kind of value myself very much. So I thought, okay, now that I'm married, I can be the person in my head that I want to be, and I've got the freedom to do that. But then I found that that's not necessarily the case, because you're now living with another human being. You can't just do all the things that you think you want to do, and you can't expect that that person is going to be everything you need them to be for you to be everything you want to be, because they're a human being with their own way of thinking and their own choices and things like that. And that kind of, it threw me off for ages.
I think it would do, because I think what a lot of people do, they romanticize about marriage. They see, okay, oh, my knight in shining armor is going to come. They want a luscious wedding, and they see that part, really, that the romantic side of and the glamorous side of marriage. But marriage is more than that. And I think marriage, when you enter into marriage, you're basically going into another chapter of your life, and you'll have new experiences. As I say, you might court somebody for a long time, but when you put people in a certain situation, they will adapt, they will change. The man who you courted is not necessarily the man who is now your husband. So because at the end of the day, it's you've come together, you've never lived with each other before, you'll see things about each other that you've never seen. You have the whole thing about having children, having a mortgage, dealing with finances that you've never had to deal with before. So all those things contribute to how you now relate to each other. And that's why I think marriage guidance is good, because you have to look at that journey, that new journey that you're going to take. And I mean, you can be prepared for it and you can guide people, but there's nothing beats actually going through it. And when you've gone through it together, even things like with your husband, you could go through things with your husband and know that you come through your other end is a plus for that relationship, because you did it together. And even like you mentioned about that you felt that being married then will sort of help you to overcome some of your past hurts or issues that you might have had. But realistically, I always say this to people, and I know a lot of marriage counselors have said it, you can't look for healing in somebody else. You have to heal yourself. And when you go into marriage, you have to be confident about who you are as an individual. People look for love in other people, but if that's how you're going to heal yourself, it's not necessarily how it's going to be. You have to love yourself first, because if you can't love yourself, you'll find somebody who think they love you, but they will just treat you how you treat yourself. So for me, the biblical principle is right. Love others as you love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, you will constantly find people who will treat you the same way as you treat yourself. So you gotta love you. You gotta love you first and deal with you.
At least have like a level, a certain level of understanding of who you are and value, even if you don't necessarily believe it the whole way. Because I do think that it's very odd, because you kind of know, well, there's elements about you, well, I'm speaking for myself, there's elements of myself that I know have value, but because life hasn't reaffirmed that, I tend to believe what life's told me, if you know what I mean, the evidence that life's told me. But there was still kind of some kind of underlying understanding, particularly being a Christian as well, an underlying understanding that there's purpose and value in the person that you are. But even if you don't believe it all the way, I suppose you've got to keep pursuing that. And it's your responsibility to pursue that and not expect your husband to do that. I have to say, like in lockdown, I mean, you saw how I was in lockdown, the first one. It was like, it was horrendous for me. I kind of, it muddled my whole way of thinking, and it forced me to have to act differently in the marriage. But then I also found that eventually I got to such a state and such a place where I was like, if I wait for Liam to have to divide his time even more between everything else that he's doing to try and make me feel better, I don't think I'll last. You know what I mean? So I had to physically kind of I had to release him from that role. Even though I do think in marriage there are some things that you should expect from your partner. However, if it doesn't happen, you still have to take responsibility for your own well-being.
Yeah, you have to.
I guess. You have to take responsibility for your own well-being and know and love yourself enough to say, I'm going to make myself a priority, because if you're not good, then you can't even be good for your marriage, really.
Yeah,
I guess, and it affects the other person.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, lockdown has, I think it's made relationships analyze itself. Because I think it's been a make or break situation for a lot of relationships, because for during lockdown, couples have had to basically be together for months. That that's never happened before, where some would go out to work and they're probably on the seats over in the evening. But it's like even people working from home, it's like you're seeing your partner or members of your family morning, noon, and night every day, every month. So it's been a make or break situation. But as you say, I think even with that, you have to, as you say, look at you within that relationship. And I mean, you mentioned that you had to release Liam from some of the expectations that you expected of him in terms of helping your well-being. But it's also good to recognize that he might be struggling as well. Through all this. So it's a good thing to say, well, okay, release him so he can deal with himself. Because I think a lot of people have a lot of expectations. They expect their partners to do this, this, and this. And if they don't do it, it's like they don't love me, or but it's not necessarily that.
It's the case,
They might have their own issues or whatever to deal with. And I think even through lockdown, you can actually sit together and talk about, personal issues and see how you can support each other in that. And it will be that you allow each other space to do what we need to do, and they can come back together. Because I think at the end of the day, we all need space. We might be a couple, but we're still individuals, in that relationship, and we have individual needs and individual wants, and sometimes we have to look at ourselves, because I know, I mean, I've always said it, some people go into a relationship, with their expectation, and they will say, well, I will change my husband to be what I think my husband should be. For me, if you got that mentality, you better get rid of it from now. Don't even bother. Because whoever you marry, that's who you married. And if you got expectation for him to change, it ain't gonna happen.
No.
It ain't gonna happen. So
Lord knows you'll hurt yourself trying.
Oh, definitely. Because for me, I've observed, I've seen it, and I've even within my own marriage, I expected my husband to empty the bin, do the garden, do this, do that. It's a manly duty. They're supposed to do all this. In the end, I did it all.
Well, all of it. No. I
did some of it because I think I mean, as women, when we want something done, we want it done now.
Now I am,
and a lot of men they will do it in their own time, and when you're off on the pub because they didn't do it in the time that you expected. Well, what's wrong with you?
No, but it's true. I suppose It doesn't, it doesn't, when you think about it from a rational standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. What you're going to do, sit there in the dirt until all the bins are going to empty. It's a man's job. Just empty the bin.
Exactly. Just empty the bin. If you want it done now, just do it now.
Do it now.
Just be happy about it. Well, the bin's empty now, isn't it? It's empty. So, men will do things in their own time, and that's how men are built. Sorry, they will do. And I'm not just saying this because it's just my mouth. I've spoken to a lot of women, and they all say this.
No, I do get it. But what I learned is that something like you said, marriage is about knowing yourself before you get into it, but also knowing that when you get into the marriage, it's about serving each other.
Yes.
Because if you serve each other, then everyone's needs getting met. It's not just about having it your way, I guess. And I was going to say, I've lost my train of thought. You're not just having it your way. So I've learned that what is important to one should be important to you. And like I said, vice versa. So if, for instance, say I do like things done quicker, even though it might not necessarily be in my husband's time scale, because he knows that's important to me, he will make efforts to do things quicker than he normally would. And in the same breath, if I know that it's important for, I'm probably using stereotypical examples, but still, if it's important for my husband to have a bit of space, I don't know, a certain time of the day or whatever, it's important, then I have to make that important to me. I might want to talk about something might be, burning my soul, but I need to learn when to pick, I suppose, pick my battles to also give him the comfort and the support that he needs. Just because I want to chat and rant about everything doesn't mean that he should have to chat and rant about everything. Do you know what I mean? But that was a hard thing to learn, particularly in the first year. Communication. I don't know what I was expecting. I just expected that you're gonna start living with somebody who you've never lived with before in our situation, and everything's just gonna slot into place. The communication style was just like night and day, and I took it so personally if he didn't respond the way I needed him to respond. But then I expected him to almost hear everything that I'm saying and agree, I guess. I don't know. I mean, confession time. I do think that, I'm right a lot of the time.
Most women are right, but most women are usually right anyway. So
yeah, but just even if you think you're right, you don't have, like I've learned, you can't enforce that.
No.
All the time.
No. Yes, I don't think you should, because I think it's not a matter of right or wrong. I think it's more of a respect. Yeah. I think it's respect because although you can be right, you can try and enforce that and become a nag or whatever to your husband. But I think there's a way of dealing with things. You don't have to push things down people's throat because you're right. Yeah. I think it's doing things respectfully. At the end of the day, you're entitled to, your points of view, your opinions, your way you feel. But I don't think it should be something that should be forced down somebody's throat. Because at the end of the day, you as an individual, we'll see things from our perspective, but a man will see things from their perspective. And, for most times, they can't understand why you feel that way, why you see things that way, because they can't see it. I think there's a book, is it Women Are From Venus and Men Are From Mars, or whatever like that. At the end of the day, men will see things differently because they're not built like us. They're totally not built like us. At the end of the day, we are women, they are men, and they do think differently.
I think there are. I personally believe that there are distinct gender differences by the way we're made up. But then there's also differences, cultural differences.
Yeah, there is.
Like in the sense, okay, like whether you come from the same country or same ethnic background or not, the way we're raised, like my family culture's different and has differences to Liam's family culture. So the fact that we're different genders and coming from different places, I don't understand why I was so, what's the word? That I was so short-sighted at the time that you can't seem to accept those differences, if that makes sense. I had to learn that whatever I wanted to communicate, I needed to communicate it in a way that he could receive it, not in a way that I felt it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if they can't hear me, it doesn't matter if what I'm saying is right or wrong. If they can't hear me because I haven't presented it in the way that they receive it, then it just causes for avoidable conflict, I guess. Unnecessary.
I totally agree.
Conflict.
Totally agree. At the end of the day, as you say, we come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences, because that's important as well, because at the end of the day, we experience things differently. But it's important to understand where people come from. That's why I feel, just generally, you don't judge people based on what you think, because you don't know where that person's, you don't know their journey, you don't know where they're coming from. And even in the church arena, we have different denominations, etc., etc. People have different experiences, but you shouldn't judge people based on what you think they should be look like this, or at the end of the day, you don't know their story, you don't know their journey. And I think we gotta see things sometimes from an empathetic point of view, really. Point of view.
I mean, one thing that I know is that the culture was very different in regards to marriage back in your day.
Yeah, it was definitely.
To mine, I mean, I don't know what you want to call it, courting, dating. Yeah, I was in a relationship with Liam for 6 years before we got married. You guys, the time
6 months. 6 months. Yeah, 6 months. I mean, I didn't, because I think as well, back in my day, it's like there was a expectations. If you get married to somebody in the church, it's like everything will be hunky dory. He's a man of God. But at the end of the day, people forget, they're human as well.
Lord knows, some of them are worse.
Human beings.
Man of the world, some of them.
Yeah, it doesn't mean because they come from a church background, they'll treat you, everything will be rosy. But at the end of the day, we're human beings at the end of the day. So the same problems, an unsaved person will have, the same problems. And for some people, it's worse. But,
I mean, I'm not advocating for short relationships or long relationships prior. I suppose it's just down to the individuals and, God's personal plan for them. But I mean...
can I just add? Because I think... I totally agree with what you said, because it's not about length of courtship or whatever else. Because when God has ordained somebody for you, that's who God has ordained.
Yeah.
Because I know, prior to myself getting engaged to your dad, I think God spoke to your dad prior, and I remember I had a dream, and he showed me my husband, and I remember him in the dream, he was actually carrying me.
You look like that.
So I think our relationship was God ordained. Yeah. And although it was difficult at the beginning because we never really had a courtship, it was a God ordained marriage. So although we went through, issues at the beginning, I mean, we've been married, 36 years, is it? Can't remember. How old are you, dear?
I'm 35, so yeah.
36 years. We're married 36 years, because I had you a year later.
And then Corinne, how many months after? Jeez.
Yeah, less than a year later, had another one.
There.
Yeah, because as I said, back in my day, you just got married, not really contraception, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so you just got on with this. But as I said, because it's God ordained, we got through it, and I would say our marriage is strong. In a loving marriage, So and then when it's God ordained, and that's it's knowing that, really, it's knowing that if it's God ordained, it's God ordained.
Thank you for bringing that point up, because there's some people who have just decided they want to get married, so the opportunity presents itself, they get married. There's some people who convince themselves,
yeah, that's true,
that it's God ordained.
Yeah,
and they will tell you till the sky is blue and there's pigs flying across it, that it was God that tell them. And the whole time it wasn't, because me and Liam have this saying, marriage is hard enough when it's with the right person, so God help you if it's with the wrong one.
Definitely.
So like I'm a dreamer as well, and I don't believe that dreams can be just partly what you've just kind of digested that day, taken in that day, but I also believe it's a way that God can communicate. And I honestly, I know that if it hadn't been for constant communication and reconfirmation from God, the challenges that I think me and Liam went through in the courtship phase, I suppose even in the marriage phase, I don't know, you'll know because you've been married long enough, there's reasons for you, I guess, to have major conflicts that can cause you to doubt what you're getting into. But because you know that God has said it, it makes it easier to go through those challenges. What did that look like for you then? I know you mentioned that you had a dream, and so it was God ordained, but I suppose what other things throughout the marriage kind of reassured you that, or prior to or during, that reassured or confirmed to you that this is where you're supposed to be, or this is the person you're supposed to be with?
I suppose I looked also on the journey of I'll say Neil, your dad.
Yeah, everyone knows his name by now.
Yeah. I looked at I had to look also, because as you say, sometimes you have to release that person in terms of where God has taken them as well, and look at your role within the relationship. Because I looked at his journey, and I looked at me, and I saw my life as somebody who can help him on that spiritual journey. So because for me, I do feel that I'm the ideal person for him.
You're not wrong.
In terms of his support and where God's leading him, because I like, for example, I remember when Pastor Brown asked him to take up the mantle basically in Warsaw, and he then was going to become the pastor, although from the fleshly point of view I didn't want him to take that journey, but that is something that was ordained of God, and he had to take that journey. And I know for leading up to the ordination, I cried constantly thinking, Lord, Lord.
Let this pass from me.
Because by this time, like all my children are grown up, and I thought, and as I say, I got married at 21. The kids are grown up now. I had to sacrifice a lot of things in terms of holidays, whatever. So I thought, now they're all grown up, I can, fly the world, see the world, or whatever. I live my life. Yeah. And I remember saying to God, I don't want any more children, because at the end of the day, when you take on the role of a pastor, children now becomes the children of the church becomes like your children. And I suppose as well, seeing what Pastor Brown went through, I knew it wasn't an easy role to take on board.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I had to put that over to God and say, okay, God, I know this is of you. And even through that journey, even because I think your dad's been pastor for about 7 years now, something like that.
Mm.
Even through that journey, it hasn't been easy. But because it wasn't something that we craved. It was it's something ordained by God. If problems happen, I said, God, you have to deal with it. Because in the day,
you're in that position.
This isn't our fight. This is yours. Because then the
day, yeah.
And I've seen God done some wonderful things, and we're still standing. I mean, for me, it's a bit like marriage. You just say, you've gone through the highs and the lows, but because you're still standing, it solidifies that relationship, and I think it solidified what God said from the beginning. Because when it's of God and it works, so you say, well, yeah, that's what God said, and it has worked. Yeah, and it's the same with the church. Really, we've come through some battles. We're still standing, but as I say, for him, he needed someone, a partner who not necessarily become a listener, but who's there to support him. Because I know, like, pastors don't tell wives everything, because at the end of the day, they want to protect their wives as well.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more of a support in helping him on that journey, really. In terms of that God ordained journey. And I know for me, it's not about status. I'm not about that. The blessing of the Lord for me is enough. Knowing that I've done what he wants me to do.
What he wants you to do, 100%. Yeah. I would say Dad's the visionary and you're the execution now. Because you're the details person. If you wasn't as meticulous as you was, the vision wouldn't necessarily pass. I do think though that, sometimes things happen and people are genuinely convinced by the other person that they're the right person to get married to. And then when things do start to get challenging and conflicts start to happen, I want to say people start to change, but have they really changed, or are they just really being who they were in the beginning? And then sometimes you look at it and you think, oh, this isn't the person, maybe it's not the right person for me. I do think sometimes, at the end of the day, life is a culmination of choices, and God allows you to make your own choice. You can either do things his way or do things your way. But if you make a mistake in a choice, I do believe as long as you love God and ultimately want what he wants, he will make everything work out, I guess, in the end. But I have seen it happen before, like even in my young generation. It's nice to still be able to say I'm part of a young generation. Young generation of marriages.
Not that young, anymore.
Generation of marriages of people who have married people because they love them, but not because they're the right person. And they're now having to make a decision as to whether, this is the person that God meant for me. So these challenges, we're going to work together through it. And yes, the one thing he said, it has to be a together.
Yeah, definitely.
If one person doesn't want it, or if one person doesn't contribute to a resolution, can it ever really work? If only one person's trying to make it happen.
No, I think one of our pastors this morning said, for reconciliation to work, it takes the two parties. You can't reconcile if the two parties, don't agree to. At the end of the day, I think love can carry a lot of relationships through, and sometimes as well, although it might, in some cases take years for it to happen. It can happen, but it's riding that storm, because I've seen relationships where that people have been married for 50, 60 years and it's a loveless marriage. I could give an example, but I won't. But
they'd love that on here probably.
But it was towards the end. Because I think like people from the generation above me, the older generation, they believed in the sanctity of marriage in terms of the you know, the oath that they made to each other in sickness, in health, till death us do part. And for a lot of that generation, they took that oath literally. And although I've seen, you know, many in abusive relationships, loveless relationships, you know, they believed, you know, they made that vow to God at the altar, and they've done that.
This generation wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Oh no. I think as the generations have come down, I don't think, you know, some of the stuff that they went through, you know, wouldn't put up with. And I have seen as well, like towards the end of, you know, one relationship where, you know, after 6 years of marriage, it was only, you know, at the latter part of the marriage, you saw the love, where
at the end.
Yeah, near the end, yeah.
My God.
So yeah, but you know, I think God, yeah, I think at the end of the day, I've always said, I know that when two people get married, although they might be going through their difficulties and whatever else, and I know sometimes people want to say, "Oh no, don't do this, don't do that." It's not your marriage; it's their marriage.
Yeah.
So realistically, they will make a choice whether to stay or to leave. And that choice should be based on what they want, not what other people have influenced them to do.
And what God says.
Yeah, and what God, yeah, definitely. And what God said. I think it's seeking God's face, really. And if God says, yeah, to leave, then fine. Because, you know, at the end of the day, they have to be confident in whatever decision that they make.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, love is, you know, God loves us unconditionally. I know loads of women who love their husbands, and even men as well, who love their partners unconditionally. But that love isn't reciprocated.
Reciprocated, yeah.
So,
but then there's a difference between love, the feeling, and real love, if you know what I mean. Because if we go back to the biblical definition of love and all the different elements of it, it's beyond the feeling. Because I think a feeling of love can come and go. Some days you feel like friends. Some days you love each other. Some days you're in love with or infatuated with each other. But I feel like, you know, when you're in love, because you're willing to, like you said, weather the storms and choose God and each other above the challenge, I guess. Obviously, I do think there comes a point where some things aren't tolerable, but then I suppose then you have to evaluate, is there a feeling of love between you, or have you got real love between you? I do believe if someone really, really loves you, they won't put you through certain things, or what's the word, demonstrate a consistent pattern of stuff that is not acceptable. Because okay, there's one thing I said to somebody before. People can make mistakes that you can forgive and move on from, even if it takes a long time. Yeah. But when something is part of someone's character now, that's a whole different kettle of fish. This is an extreme situation I'm only saying it because I've seen relationships come back from it before. But if a partner cheats, I don't think in every marriage cheating means that the whole marriage is done. In some situations, and I'm not saying it's right under any conditions, but there can be a lot of complex things that leads a person to do that, whether it's their own insecurities or whatever it is, you know, just an opportunity or whatever. If someone makes a mistake, I think you can work through that. But if someone is consistently cheating on you, like it's a pattern of behavior now. That's an issue with someone's character. And I don't think, well, me personally, when it comes to issues of character, over that I think that's harder to come back from. Yeah. And you have to decide whether that character is what is a demonstration of love in your relationship. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I think I'm
yeah.
trying to.
I hear what you're saying.
And it might not be cheating. It might be financial. It might be a lot of different other things. But you know.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if we look at who God is, at the end of the day, as children of God, or us being the church, we're the bride of God. And you look at it from this point of view. How many times have we cheated, and how many times have God has forgiven us? So at the end of the day, it's an individual decision.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be Christ-like, we have to look at what will God do in this situation.
Yeah.
What will God do in this situation? And as you said from before, some people, their relationship or their marriage is ordained of God, where some isn't. And for a lot of people who do get married to people with the wrong character, with the wrong spirit, whatever else, these things will happen. These things will happen. Not say it won't happen if it was ordained by God, but I think it's highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Yeah. And sometimes they have to live with the consequences of that.
Of a choice that they've made.
Yeah, a choice that they made. Yeah.
Yeah. I think go on, you go.
But I was saying that I know of many relationships where the partner's cheated, but the marriage still worked.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think it might be a deal breaker for some, but I don't think it has to be a deal breaker
for everybody. Not for everybody.
But like I said, it's when it becomes a character issue. Because like you said, when you're talking about like how we treat God and stuff. Yeah. But the thing is, when we do treat God bad on a consistent basis, but God sees the heart posture. Yeah. And even though we sin, when you have a heart to always gravitate towards God, not just sin, go back, God. You know what I mean? But move forward with God as He leads you forward. Yeah. That I feel like that's a demonstration of your character. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Renewing your mind daily, dying to yourself daily to give God what He wants. So if a person makes a mistake more than one time, or demonstrates something that didn't serve the relationship, but the repentance is that they want the relationship to work, and they look at themselves as a person and think, okay, what do I need to do differently? How can I be better? How can I be a better person for me? And how can I be a better person for my spouse and the relationship? Yeah. I think when you've got that kind of a mindset, definitely, then I think you can work through a lot of really hard things. You can. But if someone's just sitting there in their delinquent, not a care in the world, not a care in the world, behavior, and don't feel that they can be corrected or pulled up about it, or even don't want to acknowledge it in themselves enough to do something about it, then you have to look at, God, is this where I'm supposed to be? What do I do? Kind of thing. Because I think life's as well it's too short to suffer. Yeah. We've got things to do. God's got a purpose, and the purpose isn't to suffer needlessly. If you know what I mean. Obviously, we will suffer because of being Christian and wanting to show God's love and do what He says. But just to sit in a marriage and just suffer, for what purpose? I don't know. As I say, I don't know. Some people do, but as you say, we've got to seek God's face, really, because is it a marriage that was ordained by God, or was it a marriage that I chose? Yeah. 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 And I think sometimes, as I say, the decisions that we make, we have to ride through it, or we have to, revisit it. Yeah. But I think this lockdown is an opportunity anyway for people to reflect on themselves and on life generally, and which includes their marriage, because I know even through this lockdown, a lot of marriages or relationships have just gone by, really, because they realised and they didn't really love each other anyway in the first place. I have to say, reflection is hard though. It is, having definitely to look at myself and see all the areas where all the parts of me that have helped me survive up until now, but no longer serve the relationship. or no longer serve me and the person that God wants me to be, and have to look at myself and say, yeah, John, you've got to change that.
Yeah, definitely.
You feel like that, but you can't act like that. It's hard because you feel like it's part of who you are, and it feels like you're losing a part of yourself sometimes. I don't like looking at myself and thinking that I've hurt somebody, or that I'm making someone miserable, or that, you know, I've done something that's affected somebody negatively. I hate sitting with that feeling, but you have to reflect and see, you know, what are the little toxic traits about you that need to change.
Exactly. And then we're all human and we got flaws. We're not perfect. And there's things about us we have to look at and think, okay, well, how can I change this about me or whatever else? And also, I mean, don't just look at the negative elements of you. Look at the positive elements of you. That's very important, because I think it helps to build your character, build your confidence as well. Because I think if you're just looking at the negative part, oh, you know, I'm a person who upsets people, I'm doing this, you'll be depressed in no time, because it's like, well, there's nothing good about me.
No, 100%.
And I think you have to build on that as well, to know that I'm beautiful, or you know, I do this, or I contribute something valuable. Definitely. So I think that's what, you know, there's got to be a balance, really, because I think depression, you know, in this season is on an all-time high. But I think we have to focus on the positives, really. Yes, look at our flaws, but then, you know, address them where we can, but look at the positives as well. Because again, we're on a journey, and you know, God is there to help us, really, to, you know, so we can die daily, you know, away the things that God doesn't like or not required of us. But I think as well, I think you posted something on Instagram, you know, if you didn't experience like pain, we wouldn't know how, you know, to get through certain things. So I think there's elements of stuff that happens to us that makes us a better person. So if you don't go through the negative part, you'll never know the positive elements, really. So
Well, staying on the line of positivity, and first of all, let me just say to everybody, this has been a completely organic conversation, no script. So I hope you've enjoyed some of the banter as well as some of the things that we've been saying. So we are hoping to do another episode on motherhood next time. So we're just going to wrap this up with, like I said, staying in the whole positive element of it. What I'm going to ask, like two things. First of all, I'm going to ask, what are some of the positives or the highlights of your marital experience, Mum? I'll share some of mine. And then also your tips, I guess, in how, I've written it down, hold on, what you think men could do to help support their wives in marriage, but also what do you think, a top tip of what you think women can do to support their husbands in marriage as well. So highlights first.
Highlights.
You got that many, Maud? You got that many?
Wow. The highlights for me, I think having children has been one of my highlights. One, because to know that this lovely, beautiful bundle, you know, can be created and comes out of you, and, you know, growing up, the laughs, the joys, you know, and even, you know, ending up having grandkids, you know, that's for me. That's
you got enough now, Maureen.
Yes, I got 6. I think for me, children are a joy anyway, and they bring so much, so much sunshine to your life. So that's one of my highlights. And what was the other question again?
It was, how do you think men could support women in marriage?
Okay.
And how do you think women can support their husbands in a healthy marriage?
I think how men can support their wives, I think it's just going back to what the Bible says. It says, husband, love your wives. When a husband truly love their wives will be on a high.
As Christ loved the church.
Exactly, as Christ loved the church. Yes, definitely. That's, you know, that for me will just seal everything. And in regards to the woman supporting their husband, women to respect their husband, that too, it works. It does work. I just said before, women are usually right, and sometimes men don't see it.
They do, but they don't admit it as well.
Exactly. But respectfully, you know, you can still make him feel the king of his castle, basically.
Yeah. Don't emasculate them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that in itself will enhance, you know, the two relationships. Husbands love their wives, and wives respect their husband.
No, agree, because I have seen some relationships where people, whether seriously or in a jokingly way, banter about all their or like just spill out their whole business in public or have an argument in public, rather than almost like just simmering down and just like, you know what, we'll just talk about it at home, or agree to it. If you can embarrass each other,
true,
in public, I don't even want to know what's going on behind closed doors.
Exactly.
I really don't. And you've got to love each other, like you said, enough, both people, to respect each. Why would you want to share with your partner in public?
Yeah, true. Yeah. Sometimes that's the fleshy side. So I wouldn't say I haven't done it.
No, okay, but it is one thing.
Try not to.
No, Liam put me in my place once. It was awful because I didn't even do it on purpose. But I was calling him at the other end of the table. It was at a friend's birthday party. And I was like, Liam, and he couldn't hear me. And I don't know why I did it, but I was like clicking to try and get his attention. And I didn't mean it in a derogatory way, but obviously that's how it came. In front of people, Liam's like, I am not a dog. And he's eating his food. I was just like, I felt like a 12-year-old. But yeah, it's just about, like you said, just being mindful, I guess, of the respect level. So I think both of you should feel secure enough to know that each of you have got each other's back, and you're not going to throw each other to the dogs. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Right, so one of my highlights, I got two highlights. Like I said, the whole having kids. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about motherhood on another episode, but one of my highlights is seeing how Liam is with the kids and how much he loves the kids. That for me is priceless, I guess, because he is a hands-on dad. A lot of the stuff he's had to learn as he goes along, I guess. I think some things come naturally to us on a majority scale. I think a lot of things come naturally to us as the mothers that the guys will probably have to learn. But honestly, he's just like, he plays with them, he chases them, he picks them up, throws them on the sofa, because they all like that kind of stuff. You know, he's in love with the kids, and to see that love in him is a really nice feeling. I suppose for us though, as a couple, one of my highlights is how much banter we've got. Like, we make each other laugh a lot, and that's always a nice moment to share, and to know that we can still do that after this long is nice. And I hope it's something that we can continue on, because to be honest, I don't think he's going to find anyone funny than me.
You're right there. It runs in family, love, runs in family.
I'm telling you, yeah, I do, you know, I do crack him up. And I like that. I like that I can give him that, if you know what I mean. And I think he's become funnier. But, so I was thinking, in terms of how your husband can support women. Women do like to talk a lot. I do not, and all these things I'm saying, I know they're generalized. There are exceptions. Not all women are like this. But from my experience, I was talking about myself. I feel a lot, and I always want to think and feel a lot, and I always want to get that out. And I feel like Liam or my husband should should care about everything that I'm thinking or feeling. And although I do appreciate that it can be very overwhelming, I think there are some guys that are very closed, very kind of look, they can be emotionally stingy, not because they're deliberately trying to be emotionally stingy, but that's just their thing. They don't talk about.
They're not communicating.
And that whole vulnerability, being available for you emotionally, or even just talking about their own emotions. So one thing I think that they could do to help is having a little bit of that uncomfortability sometimes and making themselves emotionally available. So I think it makes women feel very secure. It makes us feel like you care about what we're thinking and feeling. And also we want to help support you emotionally. So, you know, it makes us feel good if you let us in and tell us what you're thinking and feeling. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced that. I know Dad can talk.
Your dad's a talker, so no. It's the opposite with me. I'm not, you know, I've sort of learned to communicate, but prior to that, your dad was a talker.
Okay.
He would always want to talk things through. I think I don't want to talk.
You know,
I got it, man.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. But that's it. I'm gonna say that's the exception then. But yeah, trying to being a little bit more emotionally available, I think can help very much so. And then how women can support men. What you were saying about this whole don't emasculate them thing and whatever. One thing that I've learned is to kind of support the vision, because hopefully you've kind of, like you said, sought God and you know this is a God ordained thing. And I call myself a traditional modernist in terms of relationships. So there's a lot of traditional things I hold on to with a kind of modern method of doing things. But one thing I do believe is that, you know, like you said, the guy is the king of the castle. Like we hold major influence. Someone used the analogy of the guy being the head and you being the neck. Without the neck, the head can't really do much. So when you know your power and your place in just having influence, you know how much you can actually contribute and steer where the relationship and the marriage goes. However, I do believe that in a lot of cases, the guys kind of hold the kind of the vision for where he wants his family to go.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you're resistant to that and only want things your way as the neck and not the head, you know what I mean? It can stifle, and I think it can become damaging. There's this word submissive. It's like a bit of a horrible word, I think, in this culture. But when it's explained in its proper context, I think it's one of the most successful keys to a healthy relationship. It's knowing your power as the influence, but submitting to the vision that the husband has and supporting him in that. Because a good husband will only ever follow the vision that God's put in him, and will only want to pursue things that benefit your whole family. So why would you kind of be so staunch in resisting that? Obviously, there are things, I find there's some things you wish were done a little bit differently, or done a little bit sooner, or done a little bit later. But there is a way of respectfully influencing those decisions and not just making him feel as though, you know, he's the king of the castle, but actually empowering him to be so. I'd say.
Well put, Liam.
Thanks.
I taught you well.
I get it from me mother. Oh gosh. Well, yeah, that's all. That's, you know, I think that's a nice place to end.
Yeah, lovely.
Normally on these YouTube things, they say, click, subscribe, put on your notifications. But I don't know how many of these we're going to do yet. So we definitely got 4 planned. So the next one will be married, motherhood. Talk about us as mothers and grandmothers. So yeah, I hope everyone's enjoyed it so far. Share to anyone who you think might need it for International Women's Month. Yeah, and I hope you've got something out of it. Thanks, Mum.
No problem. You're
First
welcome.
Lady. Forgot about that and all.
Nah,
First Lady Maureen. Oh, and I hope anyone hasn't been offended by the fact that I call my mum Maureen. Like we've got that kind of friendship mother relationship. So it's all good. You're not offended, are you, Mum?
No, Dee, I am not.
Excellent stuff. Well, see you next week, guys.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye bye.